Hello everyone, I am delighted to bring you another Mind Map Madness video from Fox Legal Training. My name is Sabrina Fox and I am founder of Fox Legal Training. I'm going to share my screen and show you the full mind map in all of its glory. And then in a moment, I will also bring in the annotated high yield offering memorandum that we used in all of our case studies on the learning platform. So this mind map is designed to guide your analysis of a high yield bond and to take you step by step and systematically through that analysis. And as you can see, it is quite comprehensive. What we are going to focus on specifically today is the security and guarantees section, and then even more specifically, we're going to focus on the sorry about that, just move it to the right place, to the guarantees, guarantor coverage, jurisdictional issues, and EBITDA, revenue and total assets of guarantor coverage. So we're going to go through this limb of the tree just here, and I'm going to make it even bigger to allow you to see it better. Now, what I'm going to bring on in a second here now is the Monkey Business Annotated Offering Memorandum. So the Monkey Business Annotated Offering Memorandum is provided to Fox Legal Training students, and it contains a table of contents that is truly magical. You can click on just about any topic that you want to find, and it takes you directly to that topic in this annotated OM. So for example, the guarantor coverage, which I'm going to go through in just a second. So let me just put these both up on the screen here so we can see them together. Now, like I said, the purpose of the mind map is to take us systematically through a high yield bond analysis. I have already done videos on redemption and also on collateral. So those aspects of the analysis are finished. The next aspect is in terms of security and guarantees to determine which entities in the group provide a guarantee to the notes. So as students of our course will know very well, guarantees are important because they are a debt obligation at a subsidiary where you otherwise would not have a debt obligation absent the guarantee. The debt obligation is what causes you to rank ahead of equity. So if you want to be more than just residual value at that level, having been distributed up the chain by way of equity, you want to get a guarantee. Similarly, the risk of not having a guarantee at that level is that someone else gets a guarantee, and then they will be what we call structurally senior to you. You do not want to be structurally subordinated to a very large degree, especially these days when borrowers are looking for all sorts of creative ways to bring third-party lenders into the structure to provide them with fresh liquidity. So you want to try to get this guarantor coverage aspect as high as possible. Now, you are very often at the mercy of what you receive in the offering memoranda in terms of what that level is going to be, because the borrower will already have had lots of structuring conversations with its advisors about which entities can be guarantors. And in Europe especially, this is a very complicated question because there are lots of local law, jurisdictional issues and limitations on guarantees that could actually cause a guarantee given from one of these jurisdictions to not be worth as much as you think it might, as it is a guarantee to pay the full principal amount if the borrower doesn't. That's what the guarantee is designed to do. But there are many jurisdictions that will prevent borrowers, especially in an LBO context, to provide that level of a guarantee. So all of that information will be set out, and we'll go through it in jurisdictional issues. But to start out with guarantor coverage, I'll take you directly to the disclosure in the summary box of the offering memorandum, which appears as a footnote to this beautiful structure chart here. The structure chart itself, I always tell students, is full of very valuable information about the structure of the deal, your guarantor coverage, also who else sits in the capital structure, which is another really important aspect of the analysis, and which I have just now decided I'm going to add to the security and guarantees limb of the mind map, because it is a living, breathing document that I am adding to all the time. But as you can see, there are these two different colored boxes here at the bottom of the chart. Now the blue box here, those are guarantors. We like blue. The white box here are non-guarantors. We do not like the white box. We like the blue box. So when you look at the blue box, and the writing is obviously too small here, but it has a footnote that says 7. So all you need to do is go down to footnote 7 here, and it will tell you exactly, I think I can make this even better, even bigger, how much on the basis of revenue, EBITDA, and total assets the post-closing guarantors will have accounted for. So in this case, the deal is 66% of revenue, 72% of EBITDA, and 53% of total assets, excluding intercompany assets. So what does that mean as a practical matter? Because these numbers are just numbers until you really drive them home. As a practical matter, what that means is that the borrower will have the inverse number of revenue, EBITDA, and assets available for non-guarantors to potentially incur debt. So if almost half of the borrower's assets are held by non-guarantors, what that says to me is you better focus on the debt covenant and figure out how much debt capacity can be used by non-guarantors, because that is how you calculate your structural subordination risk. Now, we will get to that when we move on to the debt covenant in a later video, but suffice it to say that these numbers are not terribly high. Now, we will probably figure out why that is in a second. We look at jurisdictional issues, which we can see here is going to be present in the risk factors. So risk factor disclosure on the senior note guarantee contractual subordination. There's also some impairment of security interests. Trying to find a good risk factor for this purpose, because it will very often have a very specific risk factor which is associated with the guarantees. So let's just have a look here. Okay, there will always be statements in the description of notes that talk about the guarantees and non-guarantors and the structural subordination. It's full of legalese. It's not terribly interesting. I personally prefer risk factors disclosure because it tells you what it's saying in plain English. So it talks about how in this case the senior note guarantees are subordinated, and that is one of the risks of the senior notes that they want you to know about. But I was more interested in some of the jurisdictional issues that might come up in terms of the guarantees, which should be listed in the risks relating to the guarantees themselves. So we'll just go a little bit deeper into the risk factors. And I recommend to all of my students that you review the risk factors. It is an incredibly valuable place to find information about the guarantees and about security interests, and also just about anything the borrower might kind of have listed as a risk for their operations even. And so I kind of call it, so where the bodies are buried is sort of a grim way of saying it, but it's their insurance policy as an issuer. So if you told them about it in the risk factors, then you're covered basically. So you definitely want to read them, and they're not in legalese, which is an added bonus. So here's a risk factor about corporate benefit, capital maintenance, etc. kind of rules, which is the kind of rules that I'm talking about. And it's not really raising any specific jurisdiction, but it's just raising it as a general point. And then it refers you here to the certain insolvency law considerations, validity and enforceability of the notes and guarantees. So sometimes there is more fulsome disclosure around the guarantees, especially for issuers who are issuing out of Italy or Spain. There's some ways that they can construct or structure the guarantee to make it more valuable. We don't have that kind of fulsome disclosure here because the guarantees are what they are. So what you see is what you get. And it doesn't feel from this deal that they, kind of bent over backwards to make guarantees worth more. You just have a lower guarantor coverage than you might see in other deals where they are using some of this structuring. So this is what I would say is kind of rounds it up for the jurisdictional issues. You obviously can go and take a look at this section as well. I recommend making considerable use of Control F in your analysis of covenants, and I have lots of Control F tips and tricks in the practical analysis skills course that Fox Legal Training has done already. This is not going to let me click on it to get to it, but I'm surely we'll end up there eventually. But in any event, this section is going to have a much more fulsome disclosure about the specific risks that are present here. It's actually not going to take me there, but frankly, I've had enough legalese for one day in any event. And as I said, the really key risks will be pointed out in the risk factors section. So I'm happy with that analysis at this point. And what I plan to do following that is I would pop over to the debt covenant, or at least make a note that when I go through the debt covenant, non-guarantor debt incurrence is going to be a focus for me because I want to understand just how much risk I have. Now, if you've got this kind of guarantor coverage, but there's very little debt capacity for non-guarantors, the risk is not as big. But if you have both lots of guarantor, non-guarantor debt capacity and low guarantor coverage, that is kind of more the perfect storm for potential structural subordination risk. So it's something to keep in mind. As I said before, this annotated OM is available to Fox Legal Training students, and they can go through and have a look at all of these different aspects of the guarantees. And that is going to be it for our video today. As I said previously, I will be making the mind map available for download as soon as I make some of these final changes, but I hope in the meantime that you are finding these videos to be helpful. I'll also write a corresponding blog to go along with it, so stay tuned for that. Wish everyone a wonderful week, and we will see you on the next video. Take care, everybody.